Hello, this is Jane Talbot, and as part of my 365 Days of Adventure project, today I am talking to my friend Leslie Marsh. Hello, Leslie.
Hi there, how you doing?
Leslie is a shamanic bard and practitioner, and a bard is a storyteller. Now, the reason I was really keen to talk to Leslie today is that I have been away this weekend adventuring, trying my hand at seeing fairies. And Leslie, as a shamanic practitioner and bard, is steeped in folkloric tradition and also is well practiced in connecting with a range of, well, I don't know what you'd even call them, beings, energies, places, what would you call them, dimensions?
Well, the she is the shining ones, the shining people, so I would say that they're beings of light.
Beings of light, right.
Yeah, I kind of sort of like, I dip my feet into quantum physics occasionally, which I don't really understand the mathematics of, but I kind of get the concept. And I read at one point that kind of I made the two join together, which happens quite a lot. And I read that light will actually change its course when it's being watched. So that made me think. That made me think about, well, if that does that, then it's surely sentient. It has a sense of itself and of that. And then I was sort of like doing something else in work, and this kind of idea of shining ones, light, move, we see them, then we don't see them, and sometimes we never see them, but we kind of know they're there.
Right, now this is kind of stuff for me. I made the assumption that you would believe in fairies, but I also made the assumption that when I say fairy, or when most of us say fairy, and think of this beautiful little petite thing with wings, we are not talking about the same thing. And that's why I'm interested in talking with you. I know that you have watched the video diary of my fairy adventure, and I'd like to review that with you and also tap into some of your wisdom. So when you say fairy, what do you mean?
I mean a being that's of another area in the universe that we tend not to see anymore. The traditional idea is that fairy people, the shining ones, the Danashi, were at one point actually in the world of man. We worked together, particularly in Scotland. We have the Brownies, who were helpers, and down south they would be called elves. So there's a little sort of like, what is a fairy, what is an elf? Are they the same things? Are they a different kind of species to each other? But going on to that, it's like at one point man started to do stuff that was less than harmonious with the world, with nature, which is what the Fae are all about. The Fae are all about the harmony between the plants and the animals and the air and the earth and the stars and everything, bringing it all together. They're the kind of watchers and guardians and gatekeepers of the different knowledges and the magics and the way of being in the world, of the world, and being the world and understanding that.
Right, so let me just have understood. So the Fae, that's another name for the she, fairy, and anything that might be like a fairy, and they are, you could say, nature spirits then, or even the spirit of nature holding the balance, or working towards holding the balance of nature together. And then your take on it is, as soon as man caused disequilibrium in nature, then there was this kind of separation, and the wholeness of nature then wasn't available to us, and it was our fault.
We got greedy.
So I mean, what I noticed or took from the film I watched is, that meeting a fairy isn't always a positive experience.
No.
They can be quite playful, they can play tricks, they can be quite aggressive. And is all this behaviour then driven by this need to keep nature whole? Are they angry?
Well, some of them are tricksters, and some of them are. This is where we get there's a whole load of stuff that we have stories, particularly Norse stories of Loki. Every folk story that you have that involves a culture has a trickster element in it. Like, and even the Egyptians, Tahuti was a bit of a trickster. Yeah. And you have this sort of like idea that, you know, everything's not smooth and straight and streamlined. There are little bumps in the road here and there that's going to take you into different places. And just like people, you get people who are, their equilibrium is great, their energy is fine, and everything's great, and it doesn't matter what time of the day or whatever happens in their lives, when you meet them, they're really nice to you. And then you get other people who just think, what can I do to upset this person, because I'm feeling like a little bit, you know, somebody just hurt me, so I'm going to hurt them.
Yeah. So you really do have to know, if you do encounter a fairy, one of your first questions ought to be, and what kind have I met?
Yeah. You know, what's the lesson here for me? Why am I getting this particular one at this time? They're also very childlike. They are very childlike in their innocence, in their sort of, yes, they're cunning. They are cunning folk. And yes, they are tricky. But they're also like children. And that's why children see them so much. It's because their vibrational energy, their vibrations can... Children are so good at changing, switching, and being in space and out of space at the same time that they can see what we can't. And the Fae know that, and they like to play with them, and they'll make them laugh and giggle, and you know, and then your child will come in and say, oh, so and so is coming to tea, and so doesn't really exist as far as you're concerned. But they can see them, and they give them a little cup and saucer and all this, and they're making a contract. And fairies are all about contracts.
Right.
You know.
Well, tell me a little bit more about that. They're cutting a deal.
Yeah, cutting a deal. Yeah, you've got to be careful about the deal you cut to, because of the fact that they are quite simply minded in a certain way, although they do have very, very interesting ways of dealing with that situation. When you word your contract with them, you have to be very careful, because that's where the trick lies.
So you might even be making a contract that you don't even know you're making.
Exactly. That's why they say that people disappear and don't come back. You know, because they've gone into a contract that they don't actually realise, and suddenly they find themselves behind that veil, and they can see this world, but they can't come back into it. You know?
So listen, let me ask you another question then. So I am now also assuming that as part of your work, either as a storyteller or as a shamanic healer or as a shamanic teacher, that you connect with fairy energy.
Yes. When in shamanism we journey to three main worlds: the upper world, the lower world, and the middle world. And the middle world is the world where the land of the Fae is, the realm of the fairies. And quite often we will journey there, and sometimes specifically we will go there to find a representative of the Fae to take us to a place where we can actually meet up and have some healing, or make a deal with a member of the Fae. For someone else, we're basically like the middleman to a certain extent.
Now, but we also... What you said is really interesting, because on the film I watched, and this is the thing that really struck me, a professor was talking about, you know, where fairies actually exist. And not in our imagination, not in the world as we know it, but as in a kind of a third space. So that third space you're talking about in shamanic terms would be the middle world.
Yeah, the world next door.
The world's next door, yeah. Here but not here.
Yeah.
It's like kind of like a film, like another layer, right?
Yeah.
And then you get a fairy to take you to a place where you can meet a fairy to do a piece of work, so, or to find a solution for your client.
For my client, yeah. For my seeker.
And then you would ask the right one to show up then, would you? Or there are certain characters that you know that you call for?
I have a particular guide who is a fox, and fox in shamanic terms is the trickster. So I have to be very careful about how I deal with him too, because I know that he's going to take me to where I need to be for my own growth rather than where I want to be. So when I go, I have to be particular and say to him, this is for this seeker.
Yeah.
I am coming on a journey to find information for this seeker, and this seeker is having problems with this, so I need to know where we should go. And he will take me down and lead me down the garden path into under the roots of a tree, which is usually how it is. The fairy mound is usually sort of like from a tree, and the mound is underneath. And he is the guardian of that gateway, and he will take you as far as you need to go. And sometimes you never get really truly inside. Sometimes you never get there. In Ireland, the stories in Ireland of people who have gone in and who have actually managed to get back out again by being cunning themselves.
Right. Oh, so they've been taken. They went in. They cut a deal. They didn't realise they cut a deal.
Or they fell in by accident. Right. You know, sometimes stories of the leprechauns, particularly if you find a leprechaun's pot of gold, it's supposed to be yours, but they don't like you to have it, you know, because that's sort of their luck. That's their pot luck. So they sort of like will take you and secrete you in the caves of the other place.
Yeah. And so fairies sound like a bit of a double-edged sword.
Yes.
Right. So there is a pot of gold, and that pot of gold for you could be healing or insight, something like this. But in order to get it, I suppose this sounds to me also like the hero's journey. You have to go into the underworld, and that is a dangerous way in and a dangerous way out. Sounds like it should be handled with care. So
yes, it's like anything else. Nothing is worth doing unless there's some danger attached, adventure-wise. I mean, you know that already in what you've been doing. You've been having these adventures, and they haven't been sort of like climbing cliff faces and things like that. It's been ordinary, everyday stuff that you've found the kind of excitement and the little bit of danger in it, which is change for us. For a lot of us, change is danger. And we have to sort of like have this initiatory path where we decide to make a choice to change, and then we have to decide where we're going to go with it. And that can take us into different places. And these beings are awake and aware and present to everything that's going on, because we vibrate that. We send that vibration into the world, and they sort of like sit there and they're sort of like, hang on a minute, whoa, this could be dangerous because they're going to do that and they're going to take that away. We don't like this. We need them to stop. How can we stop them? So they will put blockages up, or they will take things from you. To let you know that they're there, and they're telling you, you know. Or it's, listen, we've got your back. I've got your keys, or I've got your favourite hat, or I've got this, or I've got that. And if you ask me nicely, and you leave me some cream, and you leave me some mead or some whiskey, in our case, in the Celtic countries. Maybe I'll give it to you back, and maybe you'll have good fortune. But if you want good fortune, you're going to have to be nice to me. You know?
So for your everyday Joe, why would I want to connect with fairy energy?
Because your life will never be the same again.
I'm a bit worried that, but do you know what? I'm a bit worried I've entered into some kind of contract.
You kind of have, to a certain extent, because you've made your introductions. You've kind of stuck your hand out and said, "Hello, I'm Jane. I'm here, and I want to meet you."
The reason why I've been adventuring now for over 6 months. I'm past the halfway point. And every day I respect a daily impulse. But if I look back over the last 6 months, it looks like there is a clear direction. There are a lot of things that I have done in the last couple of weeks I would have never been able to do had I not had other experiences and had my perception not been opened up.
Yes, and the path has been being made clear to you. From the time that you started this and you made this decision, you dropped a stone in the water, and the ripples have gone out. I was walking today, just before when we had our discussion earlier on, and I was walking the dog, and I consciously made the effort to call them in and to say, this is what's happening. And on the way down there, I found a hawthorn
Right.
that I hadn't seen for the last 3 days, because I've had 2 dogs that I don't know very well, and I'm trying to make sure that nothing happens to them and nothing happens to me in the meantime. So I'm totally focused on them.
Yeah.
And today I just had Alfie, and he's sort of like wandering about going, yeah, this must be Sunday because we're having a relaxed walk. Yeah, we'll do this. And I'm looking, and suddenly there's a whole field of monkshood in one corner that I hadn't seen. And then I walked down and I saw the hawthorn, and I stood and I thought, we have to say hello. So I stand and I present myself and I open myself and let my guard down. And I send my energy and I got my hand up to one of the trees and I said, hello, I'm wondering if you are a fairy thorn. And I'm wondering if I can tell you about my friend. And I'm standing there and I'm getting this energy back and I'm getting the feeling, we know about your friend.
Oh no! Did you ask about my hat?
No, I didn't ask about your hat. I know that your hat will come back to you when the time is right. But I stood there and they said, yes, the trees are talking. The wind is carrying the message. The roots on the earth are carrying the message. And the Fae have picked up the ripple in the stream of the vibration. And that's sort of like, and I'm like, oh, she's going to have an interesting time then.
Well,
and I'm getting tingles. This is all just, I'm just getting tingles everywhere just now.
I mean, I've had this urge to connect to trees. And I wouldn't have been able to do if I hadn't done the animal communication thing, or the impulse may have never arisen. So I've spent some time out on the farm, and I'll be moving to within meters of that fairy thorn. And so the impulse, the instinct for me is to make peace with the place in which I live, whilst also wanting to connect to this idea of heritage, lineage, because in order for me to put down roots, and I suppose I can say that I have never felt rooted anywhere. My parents moved around a lot as a child. The longest I've lived anywhere is about 12 years in Scotland. And I had my son there, so I feel that a certain degree of connection. But that idea of, if I'm going to settle in a place, that's the double-edged sword. It's all, I want to make peace with the environment around me and respect it, but I also want to be connected to the age of the land and everything that's in it.
Yeah, the thing is that it's an interesting thing when you talk about roots. I have this thing about roots as well, and I suddenly, thinking about it, I'm thinking that the roots of the thing is what you carry with you. It's the energy you carry with you. It's what makes your heart sing and your soul sing in harmony together. When you see it, you're coming back to it, and that's kind of home. But you don't particularly have to be there.
I get that. I think what I've done is that when you put a baby into a bath and it doesn't want to go in, so it hoiks its legs up.
Yeah.
In all the places that I have lived, that's how I've been with the place. So I want to put my feet down in this place.
It's interesting because I get this kind of thing that's going on, that you're being called into this kind of spiritual area, this other directed area, shall we say, that you're being open to, because you're actually been having this kind of initiatory fairy tale journey where you started off before you had your little red cloak, just talking to your mum and picking up your wares and putting them in your basket, and then you're sort of like going to grandma's. But to get to grandma's, which would be home, you're having to go through the forest, and you're going through the forest of the Fae, and you're kind of walking through, and you're going through the pathways and the different corners and bits and pieces that you have to travel over to get the lessons to take you to the place so that you will be able to go through the door and be in grandma's. It's kind of like that kind of story. It's the way that you're evolving your energy. Your vibration is evolving to become harmonious with the place that you're at.
Yeah,
You've
yeah.
been called there, and the way that you got there was perhaps not what you would have thought or even what you expected, and may not have turned out the way that you expected, but it's turned out the way it was supposed to.
Mm. So if I want to, so we have this fairy thorn, and there are also local fairy, they're called fairy forts sometimes here, or
Yeah.
mots.
Mm-hmm.
We have one of those close by, within a couple of miles, but out basically within a minute's walk of the farm building is this fairy thorn. And if I want to live harmoniously then with that thorn and the energy that lives, do they live in the roots? How does that work with a fairy thorn? Why do they choose a thorn?
Well, there's so many things about the hawthorn. It's a magical tree. It's a very healing tree. In the old days, it was used for healing, etc. And you know about Joseph of Arimathea and the holy thorn in Glastonbury.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah. So I mean, the story, just because they suddenly said it was Joseph, doesn't mean to say that it actually was. It could have been a Merlin. It could have been a Fey druid who did that. And who's to say? Because the feeling there is that Jesus, all that time that he wasn't in the Bible, he was off in Glastonbury learning to be a druid.
Mm.
You know, and most of the stuff that has come out of there, like the giving up the life for the lives of others and the sake of others, is a druidic concept.
Mm.
And it's been sort of like, you know, the old thing about the Arthurian thing about marrying the land, the king becoming married to the land, etc., is an old pagan thing, but it also means that he will spill his blood so the land will survive.
Mm.
So that's where that comes from to a certain extent. And so honouring that, the one thing I will say to you though is never fall asleep next to a fairy fort or on a fairy fort. That's one of the things that you should never do.
Well, I will not have a camping adventure out of a fairy fort.
Don't do that, because that's sort of like, oh, you want to come and stay? Come on in. We're having a party. And I think that's part of it, is that they do love to tell their stories, and they do love to sort of like people to be, and they're coming forward more and more. People are becoming interested in the Fae, and this is because they're actually popping things into their heads, and they're showing themselves just a little peek. You know, it's a little sort of like tease. You know, come and see this because this is really nice, and come and talk to this person, or go here. This is why we do fairy tale nights every month. You know, and start telling the stories, but we tell the stories from the grim end of it, the lesson end, not the Disneyfied stuff. And that's what the problem has been. Disney has taken them and turned them into Tinkerbell and you know, little tiny things, and they're not. Some of them are 6-7 feet tall and tall and thin, and actually Legolas in Lord of the Rings is very like what one would look like.
Yeah. So do you? Can I mean, I want to sort of just get the definitive, not the definitive, but some advice about looking after the fairy thorn, and also how, you know. So you've seen my video diary of what I might have been able to do differently, or what I might do to make amends if I've caused any offence, to get my hat back. And also then after that, what does one look like? So if you've seen them, do you see them? Do you sense them? Do you feel them? So let's just close off the loop with the fairy thorn. What can I do then to respect the thorn?
They like it when you make sure that there's no litter or anything broken around. So if anybody's dropped something or broken glasses there or something like that, they like it to be sort of like cleared off and sweet. They don't like loud music or tinny things, or some metals are not liked anywhere near them. If you are going to hang ribbons on, try hanging them, not tying them.
Oh dear.
But you know, but it's just basically because as the tree grows, this constricts. So you know, if you loop them around, and if you're going to be there every day or so, and you can loosen them off and sort of like, you know, to allow the tree to breathe and grow. So it's more sort of like they love little. If you can get a walnut shell and that's scooped out, the walnuts out, that's the kind of size to drop some whiskey in, or a little bit of cream or honey whiskey, you know. And just sort of like the little bells that you get, the little tinkle bells, to let them know that you're coming. Every so often, just make a little noise, a little sort of like, I'm here. So, and if you trample on a flower, apologise. It's very hard not to, because we have very big feet as far as they're concerned. But that kind of thing, so like make them aware that you're actually respecting the land and you're respecting their home. It's like in Japan, you would go into someone's home, you would take your shoes off and before you go in. So it's kind of like, we'll give to you if you give to me. So you can leave little things like some bread or some oatmeal, that kind of thing, just, and of course the birds will eat it, but the birds are partly them because they're shapeshifters. They'll come in any form that is acceptable to you. Like I had Magpie this morning coming down, and he was so insistent that I saw he was there. And he's a bird of omen for me, but I got the feeling this morning that it had something to do with what was going on today.
Right.
And going out on the walk again, there was a buzzard being buzzed by a seagull, but the seagull was making sure that I looked up to see the buzzard. Bumblebees coming up and buzzing around and sort of like saying hello. They make honey. Fairies love honey.
So obviously, certainly in the shamanic world, shape-shifting is the norm. So you could experience an animal and sense its essence as being one of the Fae. That's one way of experiencing them, right? And do you ever see or sense or hear them in a way, not necessarily in the sanitized version, but the kind of thing that you would see in Lord of the Rings or
little sparks of light just off in the periphery, in the dusk and in the dawn, sort of like the areas or when you're going through doorways under bridges, that kind of thing, and you get some bridges you will go under, like underpasses, particularly these days, you will go under. I went through one this morning, and the first thing I thought was troll. And
well, they're supposed to protect bridges, trolls.
Yes, they are.
And they have that in the Billy Goat's Gruff as well, don't they?
And the bridge that it's protecting is actually a railway bridge. So there's a lot of people going on trains above it. So they're actually protecting the area around that, making it safe. But where we are is a very old place too. So there's a lot of ancient stuff going on here. And there's just little pinpricks of light, and you just kind of know. It's like when you started this, you get this kind of, that felt different, and I'm not quite sure what that was. What was that? And that's the question that you have to ask. You have to say, is this what I think it is? And then you will start to listen to your body and to the bit that is outside your body, your auric field, and the sensations that are coming in and going out there, because that's what they link in with. That's the first thing they'll touch. And that's the kind of ripple in the vibration that they'll make, is the sort of like, I'm opening up and I'm letting this flow out, and I'm expecting to find the flow back of the energy of the shining ones, and I'm inviting them in to be pleasant and be fair and be nice, and to say hello and to respectfully say, I apologise for anything that I've done or that my kind have done in this area that was not cognizant with how you are living and what nature is wanting, kind of thing. And then you get this kind of thing coming back. And people might say, oh, that's a load of crap, because you can't, this is just that. But what I'm going to say to them then is, you walk into a room with a load of people and somebody's been having an argument, and they could have left that room, but you can still tell that somebody's been in that room having an argument, because there's a heaviness. And if you can tell that, then you can take that and you can tune that in, and that's what it is. It's like tuning a radio frequency. It's all frequencies. But yeah, sometimes in my just when I'm about to fall asleep, I have the idea that there's a figure. I did it the other night actually. I came into the room and I went to put Andrew was asleep, so the lights were off. And it was still light outside, but the curtains were closed, so it was almost complete darkness to a certain extent in the room. But there was I just walked in and I kind of put my jacket, and I thought, oh, I'm so terribly sorry, I just put my arm through you. You know, and it's sort of like, oh, sorry, I wasn't thinking, and I wasn't aware you would be visiting this evening. So sometimes they come and they have something to tell you, and they'll make you aware of it. Like shamanically, we look for animal omens, so they will come the way that you will look for them.
Right.
And if you manage to change your vibration up, because they go very fast, you know, and their vibration is quite high, and so if you can lift yours to them. Maxine Sands tells a great story of when she was sitting at a person's house that she knew, and she was by the pool, and she was just, is it Maxine Sands or the other lady? One of them anyway. And she's sitting there and on the pool side, and she was just aware, because you will see them on the periphery, because they're between the veils, they're the tween, in the periphery. If you look straight at them, you won't see them. And it's like you're just aware of this shimmer, almost like the shimmer of mist in the morning as the sun hits it. And you want to look, but you shouldn't. You just widen your vision a little bit and just change your vibration. And you learn to do it.
So now let's look at some top tips for me. So already there, that was a great piece of advice, because I was looking directly at the tree. I wasn't looking through my camera, but I was looking directly at it. But that's not where I was going to see them. I would have seen them in my peripheral vision, if at all. And this idea of raising your vibration, or the you talked about not a fast vibration, but a light vibration.
Yeah, there's a when I sort of like know that they're around, it's like little flashes, like strobe lighting beside my eyes.
So how do you match? So if someone's watching this and they want to give this a go, so for example, so this weekend I went to the farm and I did two things. I connected with the hawthorn and wanted to see fairies or have a go at it, and the other thing I did was sit under an ash tree. And when I sat against the ash tree, so the hawthorn was real powerful, you know, like actually do not stand too close, right? Do not stand too close. And it was entwined with an elder, and I think elders are quite powerful trees as well. And it was definitely a really powerful energy, and don't stand too close. Whereas the ash was really open. That's what it felt like. But when I sat against it, and I could feel this kind of resonance with me, it was really low and slow. So when you're talking about this, the vibration in your body that needs to be present in order for you to, if you like, be in the same world. So that sounds to me like it's a lot faster and lighter and less dense. But
strangely enough, what we have to do is we have to stop and be still, because we sometimes try too hard. And we keep putting these things in. It's sort of like a little bit here and a little bit there, and we just make ourselves really tired, really, to try and do it. Whereas,
well, I'm wrecked after this weekend.
It's very draining. It's very draining when you're putting everything out there and you're not really getting anything very much back. But they're seeing it and they're getting there, and if you're willing to be open, they're willing to teach you how to be seeing them and being with them and understanding how they're going to speak to you. And everybody really is different, because like the trees are different energies. You'll find that there are different energies for, like, troll energy is quite, listen, I'm a guardian and I'm here and you don't mess with my space, you know. And some of the tree spirits are kind of like, well, hello, look, there's always wind in my hair and I'm always sort of like, you know, and the birds are singing and isn't it wonderful. And they're kind of like hippy-dippy, kind of, you know, how you would think boho little people would be. And then you get the ones who are more elven and more sort of like wise, and sort of like they're the higher beings of the sort of like thing, you know, sort of like you think they're sort of like how I see elves anyway. I see elves in a different way, as far as the little ones who are sort of like little tricky ones. For me, they're brownies. You know,
and you see them also as these specks of light on the periphery, or
no brownies I see I see as little shadows of energy You don't really see brownies. They don't like to be seen. They don't like anybody to know that they're there. And you never thank them. If you thank a brownie for anything it does for you, you will never see it again. It will never be in your presence again.
Right.
To thank them is to insult them.
Because that's what they're supposed to do. So
yeah.
A brownie is like Dobby then in Harry Potter. He's a brownie.
He's a brownie.
Yeah.
He's a brownie. He's a brownie. Interestingly enough, there was a theory at one point that brownies were actually Bronze Age people who lived in, I can't remember the name for the mounds that they lived in, but they lived in these sort of like communal things almost underground. They were dug out and sort of like in there, and they were small of stature. They were actually only about 4 feet tall, but they were humanoid. And what actually happened was that they actually interacted with the humans, and kind of their kind got bred out really, because they just died out as a culture to a certain extent, because going into the taller, paler regions was more profitable and more healthy for them, because they could live more happily, etc. And they say that there are still people, which is why there are some people up north who are fae. They've been hit with the fairy stick, and some people think that their children have been changelings, etc. That's another thing that they used to say, that the fairies would steal children and put their own in their place, so that you would be bringing up a fairy child, and it would never be quite what you expected it to be, or to do things. And I think sometimes that was just an excuse for naughty children, or But yeah, if you want to see them, you have to do what you do really honestly and well, and that is to get to know yourself first and know when you're being open. But you still have to be protected, because you will get some who will come through and will start poltergeisting your house.
Right. So did I do the right thing then by smudging around my van?
Actually, I think you probably did it a little bit later than you could have.
Oh, right.
Because it might have been a good idea to protect it before you took it into the area.
Right.
Because that, you sort of like going, who the hell is this coming in here with this stick of sage stuff that, juniper might have been a little bit better, or something that's more culturally attached to the land that you're on.
Right.
Sage is more Native American, and there's a whole kind of area of thinking that maybe we should sort of like honour the land with the stuff that the ancestors would honour it with, that they would recognise. But there are different things that you can do. Little white heather in the corners of your van. You can sort of like make little sort of like bell things and decorate the van in certain ways. Don't wear green.
Don't wear green?
Don't wear green. The fairies think they're yours, you're theirs if you wear green. That's why brides should never wear green on their wedding day.
No, I wore blue Wellington boots, so I think I... So let's say that someone, frequents that place on a regular basis, do the fairies then get used to you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They get used to it. And if they like you, you will have wonderful dreams, you will have brilliant times, and you will start to become more fortunate in life if they take to you. If you start to honour them by leaving offerings, you must never stop.
Right.
You must tell them if you're going away, because it's like you're feeding an animal, like a fox or something like that, and then suddenly you go away for a month's trip to Africa or something, and the fox is sitting there going, "Where's my chicken? I've got cubs, I'm starving."
Yeah. So it's like any relationship then, you good, honest, open communication, respectful of the other person's way of seeing the world.
Yeah, well, the whole sort of like thing with bees, that's very fairy magic stuff. And it's sort of like the beekeeper has to tell the bees when someone dies, when someone's getting married, when someone's born, if someone's leaving, the town, if they're leaving. And bees, when they don't get what they need, will swarm and go off somewhere.
Yeah.
So that's actually a fairy thing. really. That comes under the fairy umbrella of this is how our culture works.
Well,
Information.
listen, Leslie, it's been absolutely fabulous. I've got some more things. I'm going back to camp at the farm this weekend. So I'm going to put into practice all of your suggestions, and I will report back.
I can't wait to hear. This is great because they're coming in with me strong too, instead of like saying, because it's really funny because I had a friend recently get in touch with me who I hadn't spoken to for a while, and fairy elements just came suddenly into the room, and I sort of like, okay, this is going to be fun. And then you came with this, and I'm like, oh, I haven't been talking to you for a while, have I? Oh, my fox is coming in. I have a journey to do. I have work to do, and I have to go back and do it. And he's sort of like, nah, nah, nah. You've got to come with me now. You know, so yeah. Once you start, you can't stop.
Yeah. Anyway, listen, I will speak to you soon, and I'm certain I'm going to be picking your brains over the next couple of months with some of my other adventures.
Okay. See you later.
Thank you. Bye.